Hello and welcome to Life with Collective Purpose. And today we are going to be interviewing Lesley Corte. And Lesley has been working on an extraordinary book that is called Gems of Time. And we are going to be talking about this book and about her past lives. Lesley, tell us the subtitle of your book.
It is Past Lives with Mystery, Romance, and Spirit Guides.
Mystery, romance, and spirit guides. It just makes you want to know more just from the subtitle. Lesley's had an amazing array of past lives that encompass all of those things. Tell us a little bit about that, Lesley. Let's start with romance. Where has romance come into your stories from your past lives?
Well, first, the romance started with my husband back when I was 22 years old, and a friend of mine had introduced me to all the spiritual kinds of arts, and we decided we were going to do some past life regressions together, which we did with my husband. She actually led the regression. And after we came out of it, we realized we were actually in the same scene that in our minds. I was in Egypt up on a hill, and he was way down below looking up at me, wishing that he could be with me, but because he was a laborer and I was a princess of some sort, that wasn't going to happen. But it made me realize, like, the fact that we were in the same scene together was pretty amazing. And
Wow.
yeah, so I already knew that I wanted to be with him. He was the guy for me, but it was just a good confirmation. So we had a nice long marriage, but he passed away about 10 years ago, and I started to see some other men after 35 years of not dating.
Wow.
So I tell some of the stories about that too. And the memories that I had about the past lives that I had with these guys, which were actually quite shocking to me. So
Now, did every man that you dated or had a relationship, you had some kind of past life with them?
pretty much, except for the coffee dates on Zoom, on Plenty of Fish.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
So obviously you were putting out a vibration and energy to actually attract men that you had known from previous lives. So tell us a few more stories about that and what that felt like to have that original conversation with those people. I mean, you're on a date. It's the first night. I mean, do you bring that subject up on the first night?
I don't think I brought it up to anybody. I found that the people that I would meet organically doing things in my life were the ones that I had memories of. But I did meet a guy that came to pick up my husband's table saw after I sold all of his tools after he passed, and he came over. I was living in Vancouver at the time, and he came over from Victoria. He called me and he says, I want that saw. Well, I thought, like, he came over to buy that saw, and I was sitting there in the studio and he was looking at it, and he came over and sat next to me, and wow, he was quite gorgeous. Beautiful blue eyes, blonde hair. And we talked a little bit about my husband passing, et cetera, et cetera. And he kept in touch with me, which really surprised me, and sent me all these songs on YouTube. And I kind of thought that he was interested in me. And I always ask when I'm interested in somebody if I have had a past life with them. Well, the first one that came up for me was, he was a Roman soldier. He was a Roman guy in the Colosseum. And we were all cheering because he had won the competition against the Christian, which was a foregone conclusion. But the thing that really shocked me was that I, sitting in the stands watching, was his prize for winning this
Wow.
competition. And yeah, I thought, oh my God, okay, I've got a live one here. And I also saw him in another lifetime. And I can't even remember what that one was now. Oh yeah. Well, that's not as interesting. That was pretty shocking to me, but I don't think I ever told him. I kept that one to myself. He didn't seem like the type to want to hear that. And
Wow.
although he was kind of a sensitive guy, so I thought, it might work out, but well, part of the story is the back and forth and how things did not work out. And, I went on plenty of fish.
Right. But
So,
is
yeah.
this how you first came to discover past lives, and because of that first past life regression that you did with your husband? Was that your
Yes.
first introduction to past lives?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Right. And when
Yeah.
did you realize that you could do this? When did you realize that you could do this for other people?
Well, I took what then were was called psychic classes with a psychic medium, and learned all different things that you could do: psychometry, tuning into somebody's energy by holding an object. Uh, and we did a lot of guided meditations. So I met my spirit guide in a guided meditation. I don't know if I want to tell the story because it's quite a shocking story, and I want to keep a few of them as secrets in the book.
Is it in the book?
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right.
It's
Okay.
the beginning chapter, or the beginning story of the chapter on spirit guides, which I think is maybe the second or third chapter. Yeah, because
Right.
once I met my spirit guide, Jonas, um, I, s- I've been in contact with him and another spirit guide, Wendy, who, told me that she was introducing me, like as I was becoming part of this group. She was kind of helping me with the transition into learning my talents. Well, I actually had the ability right away. Like one of the early classes was doing psychometry, which I not everybody knows. It's holding an object that the person that you're reading wears so that they have their energy in it. And I immediately did a reading for somebody. I didn't know whose object it was. And she was like, her jaw dropped because I said exactly what she needed to hear. And she knew that it was her. So it was quite surprising to me. It was exciting because I actually had done a lot of psychological work with,
Mhm.
workshops that I'd been to, and something that was really quite like EST, but it's called Pursuit of Excellence, and it was very psychologically based. So I had a lot of training that way.
Mm.
And this was just another, and actually, when I went to this one particular training, we were supposed to write a history of our life, or what we would see as we were, 50 years from now, or 40, I can't remember how many years, but, and I said that I would be in a psychic group. So I guess it was 10 years that within the 10 years, I would be in a psychic group. Well, where that came from, I guess because I had had that past life regression, and I had been reading a whole lot of books by Jane Roberts, who channeled the Seth entity. And this was back in the early 70s. Jane Roberts was one of the first people that brought the modern channeling guide through. Many people that after that, within the next 10 years, they didn't credit her at the time, but a lot of people have credited her later.
Wow.
for opening this whole spirit world up to people.
And
So
how do you now, how do you do it now in your practice, Lesley? Because I understand you can do this as a group, right? It doesn't have to be individual. How does that work?
well, as a group, it's a generally a guided meditation that takes you and calms you down, basically, like puts you into a meditative state, and then directs you to a particular place where you would be looking at another lifetime. First of all, you talk about what you're wearing on your feet, because that's the easiest thing to look down at, and it's pretty straightforward. You don't have to be trying to figure out where you are or anything. And then when you look down and see what you're wearing, then you have a sense of where you are, and then you can start looking around at your environment. So yeah, it's the group one is, you have to, well, like, not everybody gets there. Some people fall asleep.
Mm.
Some people, and the other thing is that some people have a hard time visualizing.
Hmm.
So if a good regressionist will actually walk people through a couple of scenes in their mind so that they can learn maybe to pick up sounds and smells and just a feeling of a place, if they're not able to do a visualization. So then when you go into the regression, that it's meaningful to you. Now,
Wow.
the way I often look at this as, if you don't really believe in past lives, it's certainly still something from within you that comes
Right.
up. It's always something that's going to be helpful to you that needs to come to the surface. So if you just want to think about it as your imagination,
Mm.
it's like
Right.
your subconscious mind is sending this. It's like a dream.
Right.
Your subconscious mind is sending you images or a message for you to take a look at. And in a group session, you don't necessarily get to talk to whoever's leading it about what it might mean, because a lot of times it's in metaphor.
Right,
Um,
right. That's interesting because, so what you're really doing within in a group meditation is you're enabling people to get into that space, to have an experience. And then once they've done that, then they would need to have a private session with you, and you would go deeper into that past life, or and explain some of it. So do they talk to you in like a hypnotic state, or how does it actually work
well,
when you
if
do
I
a
have a private
one-on-one?
session with somebody, we talk all the way through. I talk the
Right.
person through. So it's kind of like hypnosis. I talk the person through into a lifetime. And I ask them, oh, do you see this? Do you see that? Where are you going now? What are you, all the different questions. I actually, within the book, I put a session that I had with somebody. I wrote it out pretty much verbatim with a few comments,
Mm.
because I thought it was interesting. These were things that I didn't know, although it's about a lifetime I knew I had in Egypt. And I went to see him, Garnet Schulhauser, who is a very experienced regressionist. And I went to see him because I wanted to clarify, I wanted to find out what that lifetime was all about. And that's part of the mystery for me, because I start the book out about how I learned that I was in Egypt. And all the way through my life, I've had picked up more cues.
Mm-hmm.
But as after Jim died, I really got very serious about looking at a couple of lifetimes, which I wanted some clarity about. And that was one of them. And I basically wrote that one out, plus a couple that came to me, which I didn't know about. So um, anyway, so if I'm doing an individual session, I would be talking to the person, and they would be telling me what they're seeing or how they're feeling, And I would, at the end, I would go in and talk to their higher self, which I think is always there anyway, but
Right.
and check in and see if there was any healing needing to be done in their physicality.
Right.
Sorry. And in a group session, I could have I could take a few people and talk about what they experienced, but I couldn't do a whole group. And if people want to see me afterwards, yes, great. If what's interesting is if you do more than one and you start to see a few lifetimes, you start to see themes that go through them.
Right.
And for me, I needed to find out, because I've been a very shy person, and I really, even though I was like in my 20s when I learned that I had this ability, this psychic ability, I didn't really talk about it to my family or a lot of my friends.
Right.
Talked about it to the people in the group.
Right. Right.
Because back then it was like, oh, you're crazy. And
Right, right. Now it's kind of, I think now it's more acceptable, right? Like now, I think there's more and more people that have, either had a past life regression or they've heard from somebody else who's had a past life regression. And I think, there's people like Mateus that are like they're on all the podcast shows and everything talking about
yes,
past lives. And so I think it's now become a lot more acceptable and
absolutely.
interesting, right? To have
Yeah,
that kind of life, right?
right, right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm finding that I forget the name of the podcast. It'll come to me. Anyway, he interviews many channelers, and he always asks the question, like, how are you about sharing this? And they all said, back in the day when we first learned to do this, we didn't tell anybody.
You didn't tell anybody, right? Right.
We didn't
Right.
want to tell people.
Yeah.
Now it is much more acceptable. And I mean, I watch a lot of the psychics and people on YouTube. It's quite fun. And I know that you've had a few past lives that you've
Yes.
remembered.
Yes. I think the first time that I did experience it was I was with a lady, Sue DeMay actually, and she was actually what it was a physical thing. So I kept getting this pain like in the back of my neck. And it was like the back of my neck, but then it was also like around my throat. And she said, I would like to do a past life regression on you to see if there's something there that's kind of keeping you physically connected to a past life. And she did a past life regression, and the image that I got, and she was like sharing that with me, was that I was being tortured, and there was actually like a rope that was I was being dragged behind a horse with this rope. And so that's why I was feeling this this physical feeling. And she explained that that body memory stays with you. So it doesn't matter if like you don't even remember that past life, that it's actually the body memory stays with you. So when that body memory stays with you, that's when like having a past life regression like you're talking about is a good way to like reconcile and heal it, right? So you can actually
and you
heal.
understand why it happened. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Well, when you told me about that, I was thinking, well, it's the throat chakra is about being choked, and it could also mean losing your voice or having your voice choked. And that is what I was looking to find out when I actually, because as I started to say that I didn't talk to very many people about this, and I can't remember. I think I put it in my introduction that I had a dream that it was important for me to write this book. And I had to go back and find out what it was, because I know that like I was kind of quieted down by my family.
Right,
But
right.
I knew that there had to be something deeper than that. And I found that there were many, many lifetimes where I was persecuted for speaking up, giving my opinion. There's many, I mean, seriously, I would not want to go back to any of those lifetimes.
Right, right.
I would not want to go back to all those societies where all that torture and
Yes,
murders and wars, the
right.
Middle Ages were horrendous as far as I was concerned.
But you know
So,
what I find interesting, Lesley, is like it seems that when we examine our past lives or that we go a long way back in time. So what
yes.
about like the last lifetime or the lifetime before? Have you worked with people where their more recent lifetimes come up?
Yes. Yes, I do know people that know what their last lifetime was, and they have, like, for instance, I have a friend who I know that we've had many lifetimes together, she and I, and her last lifetime was in Paris, and she was an assistant in a couturier shop, and that's what she learned all the tricks of the trade. And she came back and she became a couturier designer and worked, and she loved doing hand stitching, which is what she did in that lifetime in this shop where she would sew all the details and all the embroidery and the stitching on these gowns that this designer was making.
Wow.
And I also did a regression for her fairly recently, and she had more than one lifetime in Paris. Like, she's been to Paris about 12 times, she told me. It feels like her home. So
Wow. Wow.
yeah. And
That's really interesting.
yeah, and my last lifetime was quite difficult to deal with, and I've kind of looked at that a few times over, and it was in Nazi Germany, where I was an Austrian soldier, and
Wow.
I had to take part. So I've written quite a bit about that, and what came to me while I was looking at that was that there are many people alive today that are kind of my generation, like the boomers and maybe a little later, but that came back fairly quickly after the war because they died in the Second World War. And many people that were in Germany, either were Jews or were part of, what was going on. And they've come back to make corrections to
Interesting.
uh,
Right.
make corrections to what happened. And so my guides told me that I would probably see a lot of people that actually had that experience and that they needed to heal. I basically, God, when I don't want to go into politics right now, but
I'm sure it makes things a lot easier if you understand what happened in your last life and what it is that you're supposed to be doing in this life to either reconcile or to heal that.
yes,
It
yes,
must make that whole journey so much easier. And I'm sure once you've experienced it once, then you want to come back and keep learning more about it,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
also, what I was going to say, when you learn quite a few of your lifetimes, you start to see a thread. And
right,
that was a thread in my lifetime, was that I was choked off. Basically, my opinions were not acceptable.
right.
So I had to face that to write this book, which was the biggest challenge for me.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
But
right.
anyway, go ahead.
So I find that interesting that you are able to help people to heal
Mhm.
by them understanding their past lives. And I know that you're going to be launching your book soon. So tell us a little bit about that on February the 29th, which is
Yes.
a very special day, of course.
Yes. A leap year.
And we're going to be doing a live Zoom interview just like this.
Yes.
We're talking more about the book, and we'll be open to some questions if people want to ask some questions as well. And as a reward or as an incentive to help you become a bestseller, you are going to be offering a group regression series. If they actually buy the book. So this must be an extraordinary opportunity to experience this just for the cost of buying a book. So I think this is something that's we want everybody to know about, that on February 29th, we're going to be doing a Zoom call. And if you join in and if you buy the book, then you will register to take part in a group regression, which will be, within the next few weeks, right?
Right. Well,
Wonderful.
I'm going to be sending out a notice about the launch this week sometime on both Instagram and Facebook.
Right.
So people, so far, I need to make a link for people to do an
Get access to
RSVP.
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Well, we'll do that, and we'll also add it to the show notes. So anybody that's listening to this podcast show right now, you can go to the show notes and you will have the link so that you can join us. Even if you can't join us, you will get a link so that you can actually listen to the recording. And even if you can't do that, you can still just buy the book, and then you can send the proof of purchase, and then you will get registration to take part in this group regression. So it's going to be a beautiful opportunity to experience this. If you've never done past lives before, then just for the price of a book, you can experience it, and we can see what comes from that. It'd be interesting to see what people observe in a group regression.
And it will be sold on Amazon.com, .ca, and .uk.
Yes. Yes. So you'll be able to get it worldwide, purely worldwide. Yes. Okay, Lesley. Well, I am very excited about that. I've obviously spent a lot of time reading your book. The stories are absolutely fascinating. The stories of your past life, how they're connected in romance, and how you've gone through life connecting with all these people that have come from past lives, the element of mystery, and I think people are going to be fascinated to read your book. It's a fascinating read, and I think it will inspire them to experience it themselves and come on this free session that you're going to be offering to experience maybe for the first time a past life that they didn't know they had.
Right. And can I just add that my journey was fascinating to me. And when you start to learn your own past lives, you think, wow, this is I have a very fascinating history.
Yes.
Everybody does. That's the thing about it. It's very exciting to experience these things and know I have a talent that I didn't know I had, and I can clear up the issues that were plaguing me, and I can understand certain relationships because I've been with that person or those people before.
Right.
So anyway, I'm really grateful to you to do this podcast, and I will be seeing you on the Zoom.
Yes, yes, very exciting. And if you want to get hold of Lesley beforehand, what's the best way to get hold of you, Lesley?
You can message me from Facebook, or you can message me on my Instagram it's Lesley Corte, at Lesley Corte, LesleyCorte. Yeah.
Great. At Instagram. That's super. Great. And so we're looking forward to seeing you all on February the 29th for the official launch of this book, Gems of Time. And we'll also be excited for you to join us in a group regression just for the price of buying the book on launch day. So thank you for your time, Lesley. And I'm really looking forward to the book launch on February the 29th.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Julie.
Thanks, Lesley.
It was great. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.